Hey everybody, Chuck Niemer here. Apologies to those who were trying to join the session here. I was working with the technology folks and registrations worked fine. We're letting people in, but it wasn't getting them into the session and couldn't figure out what was causing this. But I wanted to go ahead and record the session here anyhow as we get started. So I appreciate you being here and wanted to share with you the reason why we're having these sessions and how we're going about it, and then kind of dive into the first topic here. So, one of the things I've been running into over the years, I've been probably doing training in supply chain for about 38 years. And more, I'm seeing folks saying, "Oh, love the knowledge you got, Chuck, and you've covered a lot of stuff, and it really helps." And I wish I'd known some of these things, but I don't want to wait 48 years to be able to learn all this stuff. How do I capture all this stuff quicker? So it got me thinking, all right, I'm going to start putting together, recordings like this to say, let me share with you the things I've had as an aha over time, and let's have conversations, and then put them out there so people can always capture those. Process wise, what we're going to end up doing, I brought this up here. This is a map that I use with my learners, because I we often talk about what does it take to be a successful leader. This is kind of my map on what that takes. Now, probably a little slanted because I come out of supply chain. My bachelor's is in accounting and finance. My is in leadership. So you see those areas of supply chain leadership and finance. But I think there's also technology and strategy and certainly other, you can see in all the small details. Now, if you do want to copy the map, of course, certainly put it into the comments in the YouTube video, or I've got my email down in the bottom right corner. Happy to share it with you however you want to use it. Change it, add on your own stuff, whatever. But what I'm going to use for a process is every session, pick something from each different area. So I'll start with supply chain strategy today, move over to leadership next time, finance, then technology, then strategy, and loop back around. So I'm just going to vary up the topics and the areas that we're in. Idea being to share with you lessons learned that I've run into, and hopefully we can carry on a conversation. And say I'd love to hear what you've learned, what helps you, because that helps me, and have good conversations and good ideas and help solve problems and that stuff. Okay. So let me stop share here and come back. I've been in supply chain. I'm going to start with strategy. Been in supply chain for easily, like I said, 38 years. Known about strategy from the beginning, but I always struggled with what strategy was or is because the definitions always feel so stilted or complex or whatever, and it was always a struggle for me. And there was a book written, let me share the screen here, grab the whiteboard real quick, by a gentleman named Lafley, and he was in former job, I believe he's still with us, but a former two-time chairman of the board of Procter and Gamble, and he wrote a book called Playing to Win. And it was a book recommended by one of my students. And the comment was, "Oh, you got to read this. This will clarify what strategy is for you." And I'll simplify it for you. He basically said, "Hey, strategy is figuring out, you got to do the research and everything else, but where do you want to play and how are you going to win so you can build your plan to get there, and then you can figure out your resources you have and need to get there." But specifically, these two of where you're going to play and how you're going to win just opened up the mind for me completely. Because as a sole proprietor, I'm always looking for areas where I can help people save money, make money, fix problems, meet unmet needs. That's where I want to play. And part of strategy is doing the research internally and externally on the markets and everything else so you can figure out where you're going to play. And once you figure out where you're going to play as part of that conversation, is you start seeing where the opportunities are, and that's how you're going to win. So I can look at my core competencies. Okay. I can match that up compared to what the marketplace is struggling with and build my competitive advantage based on what I learned in this process. So the aha for me was reading this book 8 years ago, something like that. Could be longer. I've kind of lost track of time here. But where you're going to play and how you're going to win is a huge, huge question. Okay. And it simplifies what strategy is because now I can look at my work and figure out how I'm going to make that happen. So I want to encourage you to ask that question back at work and say, hey, I know what our company is, I know what our products are. What do we do with them? Where do we take those? What markets do we play in? What customers do we play in? How do we get the business? What's most critical? How do we win the business? Because what I've got to do, this is kind of my north on the compass here. I've got to then go back and look at my work and say, well, is how I'm doing my work aligned with and supportive of that strategy? Okay. Now, I usually assess it, and I think this is a good set of questions to ask back at work, okay, is to ask people, do we know where north on the compass is? Do we know where we're going to play? And do we know how we're going to win? And what I find is when I ask learners in my classes, I'd maybe say 30 to 50% can answer that question, okay? Um, well, how do you win? It's a little bit less. So I think the aha is us going back to work and asking that question, where do we play and how do we win? And what I find also is not a lot of companies do it on an ongoing basis. Now, the other aha that came out with me, this came from work I did with a company overseas. They always talked about, well, the work we do has to be aligned with and supportive of the strategy. Now, that made me go, ooh, I know how to do my job well, but am I working in the right direction? This ties into the strategy part that says, hey, how do you know if you're aligned and supported with the strategy if you don't know what the strategy is? Okay. Now, in supply chain, we typically compete on a continuum from either low cost to the other side of differentiated. And we're trying to be different on could be quality, could be flexibility, could be agility, could be dependability, service, whatever. But again, hard, we've got to ask those two questions, where we're going to play and how we're going to win. Because what we're faced with once we know that and we're putting the plan together, part of it's going to be looking at the job we do. So we've got all these tasks out there that we perform from design of a product to order entry to planning, building, shipping, etc. The tasks we do have to be aligned with and supportive of the strategy. So if as a business strategy, we're saying we want to be the cost leader in whatever product XYZ is we're making, that probably implies we're on the low cost side. Now, I'm using this as an example. Let's take the task then of staffing our labor and resources. If we're competing on the left side, low cost, then our orientation is probably going to be for staffing and resources, no extra labor. We're trying to be low cost. We want to be the cost leader. Pennies make a difference. So any extra labor that's not being put to use is wasting us money and we can't offer the price reductions. Whereas on the right side, if we're being different based on service, maybe, then the answer is probably extra labor is okay. Because what will happen is we're going to have the staff available to always help the customer so the customer is not being ignored. We're staffing all of our labor with the product knowledge to really spend time with the customers. And yes, it's more costly, but because people are coming to us for the service, they're willing to pay that extra for it. If I didn't know what the strategy is, I could be pushing people to cut back on labor because the profit doesn't look good, yet I'm competing over on the right side, and the market says, but we want that. Well, then the issue is not to solve the issue of customer unhappiness with no, cutting back on labor to keep costs down to hold our margin, but what are we doing over here on the right side to not be effective? So I run the risk if I don't know where north on the compass is. I run the risk of rowing the boat in the wrong direction because I don't understand the strategy. Now, another aha I've been learning in this process is as I talk to learners and say, well, how often does your company go back and re-examine itself in terms of, what side we're playing on and are we aligned or supportive with the strategy? I find typically, I probably do 20 to 30 classes a year, a couple dozen students per class, probably six, 700 learners a year across 25, 30 companies. Maybe 10% say, yes, we got a formalized process and we actually actively execute reviewing how we do our work. Okay. And so my response is, okay, is that part of a lean project or do you formally or take time, I was going to say pause, but take time to sit back as a group, step away as a group and say, is how we're performing our work aligned with and supportive of the strategy? Okay. Not the efficiency of it, but the actual, is this the right thing to be doing? And it still seems to sit around 10%, which tells me, let me stop sharing here at this point. What it tells me then is there's a business opportunity for you and I to figure out how do we take the time and reassess how we do business. The majority of them, of the 90%, the expectation I hear from folks is, well, we're expected to do that as part of our job. And so there's not a formalized, collaborative, aligned strategy to make sure everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction. And if you don't know what the strategy is, you could probably make a lot of mistakes in how you design the job, and it's no longer aligned with and supportive of the strategy. So, like I said, if 10% of the companies are doing it, that tells me 9 out of 10 are not, of course. And so the opportunity in your company is, ooh, if we can do it and do it effectively, we're going to be ahead of our competition. And with that change, the efficiency and the effectiveness and the customer satisfaction are going to go with it. So, again, what's our strategy? Where are we going to play? How are we going to win? What's our plan to get there? What resources do I have? What resources do I need? I need those first two answered, figured out where we're going to play and how we're going to win, so we can turn around and figure out and look at our jobs and that stuff. Okay. Now, what does that mean for our job then? Let me share the screen. I work with a supply chain simulation here. Let me bring this up for you. Oops. Just going to move things out of the way. I work with a supply chain simulation called Flexi, and it's people learn by doing, by running a business in a simulated environment. Now, one of our decisions is forecasting. So here's my products. I've got two products, a smart home assistant and a thermostat. Three regions I sell into, regions one, two, and three, and each one's got a retail and a direct market. So this is what I did last quarter. I'm up in the fourth quarter. If I'm pursuing a strategy of low cost, no waste of resources, no excess allowed, I'm probably making decisions like here in the middle, where my forecast will be similar to what I've been selling. No extra forecast because I don't want extra products around and I don't want to buy extra components I don't need because that's a waste. Whereas if I'm competing on the responsiveness side or being dependable to customers, dependable meaning I've always got product in stock, then maybe I'm going to go ahead and make my forecast higher so I'm building extra. Okay. And I can always make sure there's product there for the customers. That's in alignment with the strategy, but I don't know what to do unless I figure out where we're going to play and how we're going to win. And then once I forecast that, this is the alignment part and the collaborative part. Now I put the forecast in. The procurement folks on their end will see, well, here's the bill of materials. Here's what's forecasted based on materials planning, doing the math. Here's what I need. Okay. I'll see control interfaces based on the forecast. I need 94,000. So I come down here last term, last quarter, we sold 90,000. Now it's 94. If it's low cost, should I purchase 94,000 control units? If we're competing on dependability, maybe instead of 94,000, I will buy 96,000 control units. So not only am I building more product, but I've also got extra components so I can always build and keep hitting that goal of dependability. And then with it, should I ship by air or should I ship by surface? If it's dependability, I might ship by air. Yes, it's going to cost more, but people are paying more for dependability. Okay. If it's low cost, then I'm probably looking at surface. And maybe I'm going to dual source and use a couple different suppliers. So this is that idea of the decisions down the left side. They have to align with and support the strategy. And it doesn't happen unless all the different parties responsible for all the different roles are talking to each other. Okay. So I wanted to sneak over to the simulation just to show you it's not just policy and procedures, but it's the decisions and how easy it is to do the wrong thing unintentionally because I'm trying to take care of the customer, but it's only from my perspective, but I'm not collaborating to be aligned with everybody. Okay. So I wanted to show you some of those decisions. So to finish up here for today, the big aha for me is the whole idea of thinking about strategy as where we're going to play, how we're going to win. Are we competing on the low cost side or on the differentiated side? And then looking at all the jobs we do and the tasks we perform and how we perform that, like the forecasting, is that aligned with and supportive of where we're playing in that stuff. And again, 90% of the companies it feels like don't. That's the opportunity. The lesson learned for me, wish I would have seen this 30 some years ago instead of only 7 or 8 years ago. So we're going to finish up here. Going to post this to YouTube, let folks know about it. Look forward to your comments, and hopefully we'll get the technology issues figured out so we can do this face to face and have some conversations back and forth. If not, in the interim, we will continue to look towards these in comments on the YouTube chat. Have a good day.